Hello everyone and welcome back to Speaking Spurs with me, Kieran, talking all things Tottenham. Today we are going to talk about Harry Kane because we have to, a little bit about the game against Manchester City, and then about a couple of players that have come in for criticism from a lot of the Spurs faithful that have had apologies from a lot of them on social media recently. So that's where we're at. So don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you haven't. Make sure you hit it with a like, and please leave your comments below as always. So let's just dive right into it, and we have to start with Harry Kane, who is now our all-time record goal scorer with 267 goals in all competitions. That goal came as the winner, the only goal against Manchester City at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. It becomes more special because it was at the stadium in front of the home crowd. It was fantastic what the club did for him when he scored. They had a little bit that come up on the screen, which they actually showed on TV. And then after the game, the fans all stayed behind in the stadium, which was incredible. The players on the pitch, they did a presentation. They were talking to him. There is some footage of that online if you do want to watch it. So the goal itself, close range finish after Højbjerg, one possession, which was enough for another outstanding win against the reigning champions. It took him ahead of Jimmy Greaves, who struck 266 goals for us, but in 379 appearances, and that was between 1961 to 1970. That is a 53-year-old record that has been broken by Harry Kane. And to make things better for Harry, that was also his 200th goal in the Premier League. He becomes only the third player to reach the 200 goal mark. That's behind Wayne Rooney on 208 and Alan Shearer on 260. And not to forget, Harry also is level with Rooney's all-time England record, currently on 53 goals in his 80 caps. So for a guy that was supposed to be a one-season wonder that come through the Tottenham Academy, he joined us at the age of 11. Not bad for a one-season wonder, eh? But look, he's been incredible. Does this mean there's a possibility that we'll see him leave Spurs? I know there's been a few people worried about that possibly happening now he's hit a milestone with us. To stay in the Premier League, he can still hit the 260 goals. I'm not too sure. I think a lot of it depends very much on what Antonio Conte does at the end of the season. But that's for another day. So let's talk a bit about the City Spurs game. So City clearly can't cope with life at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium. Still not a single goal in the back of the net in nearly 4 years now that the stadium's been about. More impressively, not even a shot or touch of the ball in our box for Erling Haaland. And when I say no shot, there was no shot all game from him. It was one of our best performances of the season. We even played well in the first half. Go figure. I mean, we played okay in the first half against them at their place before we got destroyed 4-2 when they come out swinging in the second. We did give them the majority of the possession, but, you know, they're a possession-based team. We're not. They did actually have 15 shots, but they were mostly harmless efforts. We did have a moment where Mahrez inside the box hit the crossbar, but Lloris seemed very confident that it wasn't going in, so we'll put that down to his experience, and he knew, but I don't think he knew it was going to hit the crossbar. But we looked dangerous every time we were going forward. We had 12 shots of our own. We should have had more goals. Harry Kane missing one that he would normally bang in the back of the net. We were clever at winning free kicks in the game. Guardiola actually mentioned the word interruptions a lot in his press conference. So the man in charge for the day, Stellini, he has won all 5 games when he is deputised for Conte. Obviously, it's been 2 games for us, but in previous jobs, 5 games, 100% success record. For Spurs, he's obviously had the help of Ryan Mason that knows the club inside out. The players really respect Ryan for what he did when he was in charge as caretaker manager after the sacking of Jose Mourinho. Stellini was very busy on the touchline trying to replicate what we actually get from Conte. And you will have seen in the game as well, tactically, I don't know if this came from Conte, but it seemed a little bit different. Eric Dyer seemed to step forward a lot more within the game. He's done it a bit under Conte over time, but he did it a lot in this game, sort of helped out the midfield battle, which I thought was excellent. But yeah, fantastic win. If Conte goes, who knows? Could we persuade Stellini to be manager? Probably not, just throwing it out there though. So this City match actually marked the toughest opponents on paper of the games that lie ahead for Tottenham. So 7 of the next Premier League matches come against teams currently in the bottom 8 of the table, with the other 2 fixtures at home against a troubled Chelsea team and Brighton, who are in form, who, if they win their games in hand, can actually go above us. So to get a win over Brighton would be fantastic. That run of games, though, it could give us some real momentum before the end of April, which brings a triple whammy of potential decisive clashes. And those are at Newcastle, which we know Eddie Howe has turned them into a formidable team. They get a lot of draws, and I think that'll be their downfall this season. We're then at home to Man United, and then we travel to Liverpool before the season ends, with home games against Palace and Brentford, and then their home games. And then we are on some away days at Aston Villa, and then finally the turbulent Leeds. So, in between all these fixtures, there's obviously the Champions League last 16 ties against AC Milan. If anybody hasn't been following what's been going on with the Italian League, a little bit of background for them. They have not won a game since January the 4th. They've suffered defeats in 5 of those 7 games in all competitions, and they lie 6th in Serie A. So they're not having the best of seasons at the moment. Their season's been a bit like ours in terms of success levels on the pitch. The difference is they're in a slump, whilst I feel like we're now in the ascendant. So this could be, a key time to play them for us. We've also got the FA Cup tie, either at Sheffield United or Wrexham on Sunday, the 1st of March, I believe. Great chance for us to progress in a competition that has been shorn of most of the Premier League sides so far since it started. There's only 2 left other than us, and that is the Manchester clubs of the big uns. But like this season, there's still so much to play for. And this is probably the strongest squad that Conte has had since arriving at the club. It's packed with players that he's happy with, and that he can turn to when needed. We haven't got any injuries at the moment because Lucas Moura is back. We saw him against the Arsenal under-21s. He didn't feature in the squad at all for the Man City game, but he was there. So, yeah, full squad. No injuries that we know of, unless anything comes out over training in the next week. Sunday, the match squad was full to the brim with game changers. Didn't even have, who was it? Pape. Apparently it's pronounced Pap. It's not Pape, it's a silent E. Pap Matassar Tanganga didn't make the squad day. I think we might see Lucas Moura back very soon in the actual Spurs squad, though. So keep an eye on that way. Conte has spoken a lot about needing to be able to make changes without causing a drop in quality. And I think he's getting closer to that with the squad now. So he should be fairly happy. With games aplenty in the weeks ahead, the squad will be put to the test completely. There's going to be, I feel, a lot of rotation. I mean, Conte doesn't rotate too much, but I think he's going to be forced to if we're going to keep firing on nearly all fronts. So we need to use the win against City as a template going forward, and then we can write our own script for the rest of the season. And as we know, last season after the January transfer window, that was our real turning point. Again, we went into that with no injuries. We really impressed and pushed on. So hopefully a similar thing this season. And then what we would like to do next season is start the way we finish, which, unfortunately, that's been a bit of our issue. It seems to be the issue. It translates from the games into the season. So we start games quite slow and then build up in the second half. And we've started the season, albeit we're still in a good position. We've started slow and then we produce our best in the second half of the season. And that's relative to the styles that we've had of fitness underneath Pochettino, Conte, these drill sergeants. The team are fitter towards the back end of games, towards the back end of the season. I think that's partly why we see things like that. The City game as a whole, I feel like they're obviously a very good team. Not starting Kevin De Bruyne might have hurt them, but they did try and attack that. Alvarez and Haaland in the same lineup. I just think we handled them really well. Defensively, I thought we were very solid. We'll talk about the players now. So we'll go through some player ratings, if you will. I haven't done player ratings in a while. So Hugo Lloris, he gets a 7. He made a couple of comfortable saves early on, but didn't have many serious ones to make as the defence pretty much kept City at bay. Christian Romero, he would have had a much higher score had he not seen a red card. So he picked up a yellow card for a needless and reckless challenge on Haaland in the City half. No need for him to be that high up the pitch throwing in tackles. He did make some big interceptions though in the second half, including one that led to a Spurs break. But that yellow card came back to haunt him late on when Grealish went down over his leg and the red card was produced, which means he loses a couple of points for that, so he's down at a 7. Eric Dyer comes out with a 9. He was constantly pushing up the pitch, as I said earlier, adding to the numbers in the middle, which really helped us in that battle. One of his best games in a while. He's hit it's hard to say a bad run of form because he's actually been okay. He hasn't done too much wrong. He's been pretty solid defensively with a couple of errors. But this was his best game in a while. Nothing got past him. It was the first time Haaland didn't even have a single shot in a Premier League match and didn't get a touch in our box. That tells you how good this display was, because that guy, Erling Haaland, is an absolute animal. So congratulations there. Ben Davies, he gets a 9 as well. Sent a header over from a Perisic corner in the second half. He battled away for everything around the Spurs box. Another excellent display there. We'll go with Ivan Perisic next. He actually gets the lowest score of mine, a 6. Some sloppy moments defensively with the ball, but also he did have a part to play in some of our good attacking moments, but we've come to expect that of him, really. He is much better in the attacking sense than defensively, but he was much better this time round. I feel against Mahrez last time, he was run absolutely ragged and had a torrid time. Much, much better in this game. Emerson Royale. Now, he didn't get given the man of the match on the day by Sky, but he has to be my man of the match. I've actually given him a 10. He obviously did make a couple of, well, not mistakes, but his man got the better of him a couple of times. But, you know, for Emerson Royale, this was a huge performance. So he kept his place in the side despite the arrival of Porro. Apparently that was down to a little bit of illness, but Porro was okay enough to make the bench. So even if Conte had been there, he wouldn't have started. Not to mention, Emerson Royale was actually good against City in the reverse fixture. He was also okay up against Arsenal until his sending off in that game. So, but he popped up everywhere in the first half, including on the left and through the centre of midfield on occasions. Honestly, he was everywhere like a jack in a box. He put the ball on the plate for Kane, only for the striker to miss the ball early in the second half. He made some great challenges in the second half and in a running battle with Grealish. It was a great one to watch for the neutral, including one perfect tackle on the England man in the Spurs box. His best game in a Tottenham shirt by far, and Grealish was constantly frustrated by his defending. Has to be man of the match. There was a lot of banter going on between them at times. I just think Emerson Royale, he's obviously seen Porro come in. He's seen off a couple of other players in Matt Doherty, Jed Spence. You know, and defensively, I've always said on this channel, I've got no issues with him defensively. He's a very good right back. Can he become a great right wing back? Well, it's hard to say. He's still at a good age. He's tried things like, we said he's had reports done on Hakimi to try and learn from his game. But I think we'll see the best of him now with Porro in there, because Porro is the right wing back that Conte really wanted, which means he's got a perfect example of somebody to learn from in training, but defensively he's a better player than Porro. So this could really benefit him, and we could end up with, you know, a very good right wing back that provides assists and goals in Porro, but also we could have the defensive solidity of Emerson Royale, who's then going to adapt his game and become more effective in an attacking sense. He had a moment as well when he ran onto a ball when he was attacking into the box. He just mishit it. Well, he didn't really get there in time, did he? But great from him. Middle of the park, Bentancur comes away with an 8. Quite a game from him. But this is why. He picked up a first half yellow card, but handled it well and was composed throughout. Used the ball well at every opportunity. But I think the reason why it looked like a quieter game was because Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, who comes away with a 9, was fantastic. Great work. 15 minutes in to press high up the pitch, won the ball back, and then ran forward, and then to touch it to Kane to score when he was sort of knocked over himself. He was everywhere as well in both halves and knew how to stop the clock to frustrate City, which we'll talk about in a bit. Apologies that this will be a bit of a longer video, probably pushing on the half-hour mark. Might be able to get it under. Dejan Kulusevski, he comes away with an 8. He was a constant outlet on the right-hand side. He's always out there really wide waiting for the ball. Stretch City down that flank with Lewis having come inside. Now, the thing I like when Kulusevski's out there, in some of the games, like this one, he doesn't actually create as many attacking chances as he does against other teams. But what he does well, he gets the ball out there, he holds it up, he slows it down a little bit, and just gives us a bit of breathing time to catch up. And it drags the City defenders about. So I enjoyed watching that performance from him. Sonny on the other side, he comes away with an 8 as well. He embarked on a box-to-box run early on that seemed to give him some confidence. He was a constant threat to City with his runs down the left and through the centre. Then Harry Kane, he comes away with a 9. Obviously, we spoke about him being the all-time top goal scorer now. He missed a good chance early in the second half as he swung and missed the ball from the Emerson cross. He had a couple of other efforts as Tottenham broke up the pitch constantly, and he held up the ball really well. So yeah, a 9 for him. Then if we just talk quickly about the subs, Sessegnon came on, gets a 6. He did well down the left in the game with some runs to stretch City, and he actually got Kyle Walker booked a bit late on. Yves Bissouma, a 6 from him. He added some energy to the midfield in the final minutes. And then Davinson Sanchez, he had to come on because of the red card to Christian Romero. He gets a 6 as well. He did well when he came on. So naturally he'll have to play the next game for the 1-match ban from Romero. But I'm not too worried about that because I thought at Preston they were clever in the fact that they let him captain the team because it put more responsibility on him, which meant he had to concentrate more. And as we know, Davinson Sanchez, his biggest letdown is his concentration. So hopefully he'll come into the next game to cover and do really well. Okay, that's it for the player ratings. So we spoke about the game, spoke about the players. Now let's talk about 2 players that I feel need a little bit of credit here. So we're going to talk about Emerson Royal and Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. So Emerson Royal lays down a challenge to Porro. Determination brings its rewards so often, and it did for Emerson Royal in a bucket load. The 24-year-old was linked to be moved or shipped out of Spurs during the window. He had no intention of doing so. He said he's happy in London. He's settled into Spurs in terms of in the squad really well, not so much on the pitch. He's had an uncomfortable experience from the fans. I think a lot of the fans are being disrespectful to a player that he doesn't put himself on the pitch. The manager does. It's not his fault he's a right back and not a right wing back. But the stadium was full of cheers when he exited the pitch against Aston Villa on New Year's Day, which I thought was really disrespectful. He's never wavered from his belief that he wants and deserves to be a Tottenham Hotspur player. And like you can see, he puts the effort in the games. He's just, some people say not good enough. I don't think he's not good enough. He's just in the wrong position. He's got time to learn. He's suffered a lot of abuse online. It was so bad during one period that he actually turned off the ability for those that he doesn't follow back on Instagram to reply to his posts. And then on Sunday night, after the game, he posted this. This is my team. This is Tottenham. The replies were then unrestricted for that. He allowed people to comment, and they were full of praise and even some apologies. For Emerson had just put in his best performance in a Spurs shirt, and he'd given everything to the club's cause. He was fighting non-stop. So we know that Matt Doherty left for free, which I still think is ridiculous. And then Jed Spence is obviously out on loan. So he's sent off both of them. But an even greater threat emerged when we signed Porro. Porro wasn't in the starting lineup, as I said, because of his illness. But that was a bug that had been going around the whole Spurs squad. It has been for the last couple of weeks. So unluckily for Porro, he's come in the door and automatically picked it up. But as I said earlier, Emerson has often played well against Manchester City in the past because defensively he is a good player. And in an attacking sense, Man City, we know, are very good. So his defensive attributes help us out in them. Porro and fellow January signing Danjuma were introduced to the crowd before kickoff. Mora ran over during the warm-up to cheekily join in as they applauded the new signings, as if he's a new signing himself. I mean, it feels like it's, we haven't seen him. He wasn't in the squad, as I said, but he's close to returning. And it's a cliche that he's been out for so long, you know Conte is going to say that it's like having a new signing. So with Porro waiting there for his chance, many frustrated Spurs fans, were really annoyed when they saw Emerson in the starting lineup. I think defensively he's fine anyway, so I wasn't too concerned in the City game. I think there were a few groans when his name was announced at the beginning, Emerson Royal in the starting lineup. And had Emerson Royal had any bad moments in this game, I think the fans would have quickly turned in asking for Porro to come on and take his place. But he played like a man with no fear whatsoever, nothing to lose. He didn't accept the fact that Porro is coming to be his replacement, rather than Porro is in there to help push him to be the competition. Emerson has often been the starting right wing back for Conte, so he will be saying it's my shirt and it's yours to win. I think we'll see quite a bit of rotation over the next couple of weeks between them, but Porro will probably be the man to end up with the jersey. But look, he's laid down a challenge now to the new man, so he's going to have to rip the roll out of his hands if he wants it. He fought for everything. The running battle with Grealish was one of the highlights of the game. Grealish did get by him a couple of times, but those moments were very rare. And on the whole, Emerson stifled him. There was culminating tackles, one big one in the Spurs box that was so well timed, it brought a Tottenham goal kick. The two men were seen bickering with banter throughout. But, I thought it was excellent. I really enjoyed watching that battle there. In all, Emerson made 2 tackles, 2 interceptions, a game-defining 6 clearances. His duel with Grealish was summed up by the fact that they were the 2 most fouled men on the pitch in the game. So the Spurs man went down 5 times and the City winger 7 times. So that tells you just how much was going on between them two. Going forward, though, Emerson actually had an impact for once. It was one of the main areas that was expected to be covered by Porro coming in an upgrade. But Emerson showed that he can play a part in that area. Nowhere near the finished article, but can play a part. So he served up the cross for Kane in the second half that Kane completely fluffed. But, this was a night when Emerson showed exactly why Conte was happy enough to let him stick around over Doherty and Spence. Although Spence had a very good debut for Rennes the other night. So Stellini's gone on to say, Emerson was one of the most important players. In the end of the game, he had 2 or 3 situations and showed his desire like all the team. It's important to have different players in the same position with different skills, and you use the players when you need. Emerson showed today he is a good player. He then speaks about what had affected him over the last few months. So he said, I think that in the Arsenal game in October, he didn't deserve a red card and he lose his place in that moment. He lost his place in that moment and not a good red card. It was not a good decision. It created a problem for Emerson and he needed time to find that place because for the first 6 games of the season, he was this player. So he's saying he started the season well, the red card came, he then struggled, caused him problems, but fine now. So at 24, Emerson Royal can continue to learn and improve, and perhaps the balance that he has with Porro will hand Conte a better contrast when he wants to counter and exploit certain opponents. The Spaniard will bring obviously the attacking threat, while Emerson can be trusted to defend against the best teams in the Premier League. So after a tough time for the Brazilian, it was a night when he made his point and he received exactly what his efforts deserved. The Spurs fans were very good to him in that game, so hopefully they'll get behind him when he does make a couple of mistakes, because it will happen, he's a footballer. Now, the case for the defence, we'll talk about them as well. It wasn't just Royal who had a big answer for the critics on Sunday. One of the main complaints in the January transfer window, myself included, was that we didn't upgrade the defence, and injuries down the line may yet to prove that to be a concern. But the current defenders certainly provided a great performance against City. Dyer and Davies, they've always had their critics from day one at Spurs. Davies had him up until he moved into left-sided centre-back, but they've started to creep back in. Eric Dyer, it's just been up and down the whole time he's been at Spurs. Regardless, the amount of times they put their body on the line for the team on Sunday just showed how good our defence can be as a unit with them in it. They're experienced, they've been here a long time. They obviously love the club now because they've had to embody it over the years. Much was made, not least by Conte, of the poor run of 21 goals conceded in 10 games. It was notable that around that big group meeting that they had the other week, when everyone aired their grievances, they've now recorded 5 clean sheets from their past 7 matches in all competitions. So sometimes that is all it takes, communication amongst people to get things back up and running. But it was Dyer's best performance of the season by far. It was more in keeping of the consistent displays that he had last season, which I thought was it was his best season for Spurs, last one. He was colossus in the centre of defence, the main pillar, holding it up when he got... he was holding the defence up, the line. He got his thigh to that powerful Alvarez shot, which may have been going over anyway, but he enjoyed that moment so much, he punched the air, and all it was him sticking a thigh out to deflect it over. But he wasn't to know that it was going to go over from there. There was a big crowd in the box. But his application, execution, and the result, and his teammates celebrated with him as if he'd scored a goal. So, that's how much these moments mean when defenders put their bodies on the line, deflect things away. There was another moment in the game, I can't remember who it was, but somebody did something, they blocked it, the ball went out for a corner, and they bumped chests with each other. But let's talk about what Dyer did. So on the night, he made 2 blocks, 4 clearances, 4 headed clearances. He recovered the ball 5 times and won 3 of his 5 aerial duels. What else? Yeah, and then obviously Haaland didn't have a sniff at goal, because every time the ball come near him, Dyer would just rush in and deal with it. He was also aggressive in his movement up the pitch, constantly pushing up to add the extra number in midfield, occasionally even the attack. In the moments before Højbjerg set up the goal for Kane with his pressing, it was actually Dyer who'd broken up the pitch to urge the team to harass their opponents. He's very much a natural leader, Eric Dyer, very much. Then obviously to Dyer's left, Davies put in a performance with all the hallmarks of the best displays from the Welshman, and he's currently keeping Clement Longley out of the side. And we're talking about a defender that's somebody that Barcelona signed, so he's no mug, he's just not quite hitting the heights, and being kept out by Davies, so great. Mahrez, who was such a destructive force at the Etihad in the second half, he was reduced to one real moment of intent inside the box when that powerful shot hit the crossbar, alongside Davies. While he still had some sloppy moments on the ball, Perisic was far more disciplined against the City attack than he had been in the reverse game. What did Davies say? He said, we went through a bit of a patch when it was difficult, and we're at a stage when we were having to score goals to come back and win games, and that's not where we want to be. We were happy as a unit to keep the clean sheet, and it gives us a good platform. I think we had a rude awakening after our last 8 games or so, when we were going on a bad run and we were conceding a lot of goals. We needed to be better, and with a bit of a kick up the arse, we were back in a good rhythm, and those kind of moments, like Dyer's blocks, show the togetherness that we've got. It's all of the little things, like Emerson with some great headers at the back post. He was excellent, and I think that's the spirit and the mindset that we need to have. He then added, we still know there were things we could improve on. We could have been more clinical today, and we could have cut down on more of their chances, but overall we're very happy. It was a good performance, and we managed the game well. When we had to sit in, we were smart, and we had to put pressure on the ball and win it back. We did that and were on the front foot. We did it well and were deserving of the win. Romero, he just delivered a display that showcased the best and the worst of his game, obviously. He lunged into the reckless tackle 26 minutes in and got his booking. That was so late. Haaland was practically on the team bus heading back to Manchester City when it happened. It was one of those throwback challenges that brings, a good response from the old pros, saying like he let him know he was there. But ultimately, in the modern game, you can't get away with it. Yeah. But then after that, he showed all the good things that he can bring to the game. Inch perfect anticipation, interceptions, midfield splitting drives up the pitch. But then obviously 87 minutes, needless first challenge came back to haunt him because Grealish knew the challenge was coming. Grealish is like the most foul player in the Premier League. He knows exactly what he's doing. He knows where to put his body to go over people's legs. That happened. There could be no complaints. So it actually left us having to hang on for the remaining 8 minutes of the game without him. And I was very nervous for all of that. Very nervous because you just think, But Romero posted on Instagram after the game saying, great game from everyone, impressive win. Let's keep it up at Spurs official. Sorry to leave the team down a man, but it's been a long time since I get one. So he's trying to joke about it, and I think he can because we got the win. Had we come away from a draw, I think that would have been a bit different, and he probably wouldn't have said that. So, oh yeah, he also put on that post a red card and a smiling emoji. But he's right, though. The yellow cards have been racking up. 6 in the past 6 matches, if you include the 2 against City. But he hasn't been sent off since Conte's first game. That frenetic Conference League tie against Vitesse. However, Romero can only smile about this red card because we did win. But he does need to mature, show some more discipline, and then he can become a world-class defender. Right, okay, now into the last bit. Sorry this is taking so long. But Højbjerg's dark arts. So, Pierre-Emile Højbjerg, he's another Spurs player who's not always been given the easiest ride by the fans. I've always respected what he does because he does the things that nobody else wants to do. It's not a glamorous job. He runs about, he breaks up the game. Sometimes he's left exposed because we play 2 in midfield against a lot of teams that play 3 in the centre of midfield, or a 5 in midfield. So I look at it more objectively and see the fact that sometimes they're left overrun, because if you play in 2 centre midfield and then another team plays 3, naturally 2 into 3, it leaves gaps. So but he was an absolute warrior, Viking warrior in the centre of the team's best performance of the season. He made 3 tackles, 2 interceptions and 2 clearances, and had that fine assist for Harry Kane's record-breaking goal. He pressed high up the pitch, winning the ball back, and then drove on playing it as he was clattered into as well, which showed good composure from him. Stellini said, I think it was a great performance for 90 minutes. He's talking about Højbjerg. Great performance for 90 minutes with a great lucidity, with a great mind and thinking about his position and what he had to do on the pitch. He worked very well, and the ball he gave Harry was amazing. The best thing was that he used his mind every time in the game to find the right position. When you have a player that plays with his mind and thinks when he moves in the game, it's very important. But yeah, most of all, Højbjerg, and this is off Stellini now, this is me, he was just a pain in the backside to City the whole game. And then when Guardiola was talking about interruptions in his press conference, he might as well have just named interruptions Pierre-Emile Højbjerg. He does this all the time, Højbjerg. He is somebody that Pochettino would have loved. Mourinho obviously brought him in, and Conte. They've all pleaded for Spurs to be more aggressive. They've always been labelled as the nice guys, a soft touch. But the best example of us being, you don't have to be nasty in the challenge, you have to be clever. The moment that summed this up the most was the City free kick. It actually hit Harry Kane first in the wall and then glanced off of Højbjerg. So no power at all in the bit that hit Højbjerg. He then goes down holding his face as if he'd just been smashed by, I don't know, Akinfenwa. Just laid down on the floor. He would have known at that point the referee has to stop the game because it's a head injury. He does this all the time in games. We see him hitting the floor, rolling around, wasting time. And we know most of the time there's nothing wrong with him because he's built like a brick wall. Not stature-wise, but internally, the guy is absolutely solid. Some of the things that have happened to his legs in games, and he just gets up like nothing's happening, and he just tries to carry on. So he does it all the time. He's great at time wasting. He knows how to disrupt an opponent's flow. It puts them off their game, and that's exactly why the top teams have players in their squads that do it. He's not the only one. Alongside Højbjerg, I said Bentancur took a bit more of a back seat, but that was because of his yellow card, and he showed Romero exactly how you keep your head in the game. He still managed, despite the yellow card, 4 tackles, 3 interceptions, and 3 clearances, and an excellent display of his own. Like, this was a game where Spurs reminded everyone that they have a massive part to play in this second half of the season. Newcastle, Manchester United threatening to pull the top 4 away, Brighton closing in quickly behind. It was a game where, we needed to simply get a win. Despite the scale of the performance required, we had to do it. We had to get a win to lay down a marker, and it'll make people look at us. So we now sit 3 points behind third place United, 5 ahead of Brighton, albeit with 2 games in hand for them, so they can, with 2 wins, leapfrog us. Even City, 6 points ahead. They're not entirely safe. I mean, they are, but they're not. Mathematically, they're not. So we also know there's been the Premier League charges as well brought up against Manchester City. What does that mean for us? This season, I don't think much. It's not something that's going to just be done like that. It's taken them 5 years to get to the stage where they've actually publicly announced the charges. And City, I think, are confident that they're not going to actually have to suffer anything from that. They've been cooperative the whole way through. And they actually released a statement saying that they're shocked that the charges have been brought against them because they've been so cooperative to prove things. So there's 111 charges being brought up against them, but they're confident that none of these will result in any action this season or at all. So don't expect a points deduction and us to jump above them. And we are not going to be handed that trophy for the cup final. Okay, so yep, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed that one. Bit of a long one, 37 minutes. I mean, I'm so sorry about that. Anyone that stuck around for the whole video, thank you so much. I have been Kieran from Speaking Spurs, talking all things Tottenham. Don't forget to subscribe, like and comment. And until next time, come on you Spurs.